Today I'm going to be showing you guys step by step how to install a stove jack in your RAINFLY or in your tent. I'm going to have links below for each and every single thing that I use in this process, and I'm going to give you a quick, although detailed explanation for what we're using and why we're using it. So today I'm going to be putting my stove jack in the RAINFLY on my Coody Koala 7. I have 3 of these and not one of them has a stove jack in the RAINFLY. So the first thing you want to do is set up your tent and put the RAINFLY on. We got to make sure that this thing is in the correct position. You can see it touches the ground over here all the way down this side. We need to come over to the other side here and make sure that it also touches the ground. Pull it a little bit if you need to. We got a seam up here we can kind of go by along this beam, but you just want to make sure that it is in the correct position before you start to do this. The last thing you want to do is cut a hole in the wrong place. And I'm going to put the exact link below in the comments. This is it right here. You can see we've got Velcro around the edges on this side. The flap actually tears off. We've got Velcro on this side. If we spin it around, you can see there's Velcro on this side with Velcro strips. Those strips come off as well. We're going to use those in just a minute. You can see there's a hole in the middle. This is a fireproof material. I believe this is a 2.5 or a 3-inch hole. Whatever stove you have, I'm going to be using the Caminus M, so I know I need 3.5 inches. So I'm going to have to cut that a little bit bigger. We will get to that in a minute as well. This is the flap here. You can see it's got a toggle. It's got the little loop on the other side here. This is the top right here, and we're going to have to attach this to the RAINFLY itself. We'll get to that. You need the loop and the toggle at the top so that when you roll it up, you have those two sticking out like that, and the toggle will hold that in place on the top of your stove jack. When you undo it, you want that flap to roll down and cover that so that the rain can roll off if you're not using the stove jack. For the moment, we're going to work with this piece right here, and the first thing I want to do is just make sure that this is actually the same size as the stove jack that we have in here. And it is. The gray box here is the same size as this beige box right here. Like I said before, the hole is not the same size. I'm going to have to cut that a little bit bigger, but we'll get to that later. The point right now is that we want this to match up with this on the outside of the tent. So the first thing I did was make a template with a piece of cardboard. It's the exact same size as the gray part that you see on this square right here. Because when I mark the spot on my RAINFLY that I want to put this stove jack, I want to make sure that I leave enough space for this Velcro around the edges. I've seen some videos where people accidentally cut it the size of this whole box, and then they got a hole in their tent and they got to figure out how they're going to fix that because they don't leave that edge where you can connect the Velcro. Now, the most important thing in this process is that you are prepared before you ever make any kind of a cut or a hole or anything in your tent, or in this case, the RAINFLY. So I'm going to pull this thing back and expose the stove jack that's already on the tent here. And I'm just doing that to show you guys how I'm going to do this. We've got this roll up here. This is the part that covers this stove jack, but I'm going to put this back over it. I'm going to use my cardboard template here, and I'll be able to feel that right there when I'm putting this in place on the RAINFLY. So let's go ahead and cover that back up. And once again, just make sure 100% that you've got your RAINFLY in the correct position when you do this. So right there is our little bump. So if I set this right here, that should be right in the perfect spot. And you can even feel the edges of the seams from the stove jack that's underneath it. Now, this is a black RAINFLY, but you can still see a Sharpie on it. So I'm just gonna trace the edges of this. That way I can remove it and I can see exactly where that square is. And as I run my hand along that, I can tell that we got that mark in the right spot. So now we're coming back to the stove jack itself. We need to make sure that these lengths of Velcro along the side are the correct lengths, because if you look, they have them overlapping these pieces here. So we need to cut those down a little bit. So basically each one of these where it overlaps, we need to cut off that end. That way nothing overlaps over that, and it's going to adhere correctly when we stick this on. And now that we have our RAINFLY marked and we have that prepared, we can go ahead and take the RAINFLY off and put it on a table to make it easier to work with. So we got the RAINFLY laid out flat on the table here. You can see the outline that I made with the Sharpie. We'll take the template and lay it on there again and just show you that it is right around the edges. This is where the stove jack is going to go. But right now we want to take off these Velcro strips and glue them around the edge of this. We're going to use this little Trek Revive label right here as the top, so that we know where each piece goes. So there we go. Now we have these in the exact position we need them. You can see that it's the same size as the stove jack right here, and that Velcro is going to match up perfectly when we lay it on there. And again, do not be tempted to cut anything yet. We are not cutting yet. We want to get everything else in place so that we know that when we cut, we are cutting it correctly. So the next thing we're going to do is glue these strips of Velcro into place. And what we're going to use to do that is this stuff right here, Seam Grip Plus WP. This is from a company called Gear Aid. You can get this on Amazon as well, and I'll have a link for the exact thing that I bought below. I actually bought a 2-pack. It came with 2 tubes of the sealant, a little brush, a nozzle brush that goes on top of the sealant tube. Now this is a sealant and adhesive. This is waterproof, this is permanent, it's flexible, and it dries clear. Seals, seams, and fixes tears in tents, sleeping bags, and outdoor gear. Permanently bonds to outdoor fabrics, including nylon, canvas, vinyl, and rubber. This is exactly what we need to do this correctly. So again, what we're going to do here is glue these Velcro strips on right here. Now I can't stress enough to double check before each of these steps to make sure that you have your stuff in the correct position. This is the outside of the RAINFLY, and that's exactly where we want it. So having these in place, I'm just going to move each of these out of the way. I know which sides they need to go on. I can see my perimeter right here drawn with the Sharpie. After we put the glue on, we know exactly where they're gonna go, but I want those to be out of the way so we can work with one at a time. We're gonna put some glue along here on the actual fabric, and we're also going to put some glue on the back of the Velcro strip. So let's get that ready right there. We're going to grab our tube of the seam grip, open that up, and surprisingly there is no little point on the top of here that you can put on there to bust that open. So I'm just going to grab a screw, pop that in there. Be careful you don't get it on anything you don't want it on. And we're going to use this right here. We put this right over the top. This will allow us to squirt some on there and then wipe it on without even having to mess with this brush right here. So we just squeeze and wipe it right along the top there. Make sure you've got plenty on there. We're gonna do the same with our strip of Velcro right here. And then we're just gonna flip this over and very carefully put it in place right along the top there. And I'm going to smooth some of this out around the edge here because we want that to be waterproof around every edge. And that's exactly how you're going to do with each of the other ones as well. And you can only try your best to make as little a mess as possible because this stuff will get all over. And there we go, we have all of them glued on. You can see I use a pretty liberal amount. We want to make sure that these stay on there permanently and that it gives us a waterproof seal around the whole perimeter. While it's wet, you can kind of move it around a little bit, make sure it's in the perfect position, and there we go. Okay, now that we've got that step done, we need to actually let this cure on the level surface for 8 to 12 hours. You guys don't have to wait for that. That'll be in just a second here. But if you're liking this video so far, please take a moment to subscribe. Let's get back to it. Okay, so this has been sitting here overnight. It has been curing for about 24 hours. You can see that it still looks wet around the perimeter, but it is not. You can touch it. It's a little bit gummy feeling, but it is not wet at all. Does not come off on your fingers. These are all firmly in place, and we put enough of that sealant on underneath that when we smoothed it down, it squeezed out both sides, and that's what really gave us that waterproof perimeter around there. Now we can take the actual stove jack and we can set it on here, and you can see where it fits perfectly. Velcros right into place. And then this part will go right on top of that. That Velcros right on there when it's closed. And this part up here, we're going to be gluing to the fabric of the RAINFLY. We'll take these back off. Now we're ready to make our cuts. The first thing we need to cut is this square out of here, and then we need to cut this circle a little bit bigger. Now my stovepipe is the size of the outer ring here, so I'm just going to take some scissors and cut that out, make it a little bit bigger. Very carefully, just right around that outer ring there. And there we go. It's not a perfect circle, but all I needed to do is make it a little bit bigger so that my stovepipe will fit right through there. And I actually have a new Caminus M stove here that I can show you. If we expose the pipe right here, you can see that that fits right over it. Now, when we go to cut this out, let me just say that since we're just cutting out a square on here, this entire inside part, it doesn't matter what position you have your RAINFLY in right now. But when we go to attach this, you want to make sure you know what position you have it in, so you're actually gluing this on the top of it. We don't want to glue this way and have this the top up here. See what I mean? We'll come back to that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take a razor here. I put a new one in so there's no issues with cutting it. I have a piece of wood under here. You can see the edges there. You wanna make sure that you have something to protect your table under there as well. So we're just gonna take our knife and we're simply gonna cut around the edges here. Okay. And there we go. That is cut out. We have our hole in the RAINFLY. Now when we put this on, Velcro it into place. We've got a waterproof seal around there, and we've got our hole right here for our stovepipe. So now we're ready to put our flap on. We've got the stove jack Velcroed on there, and like I said, we want to make sure we put this in the correct position. This needs to go at the top, so we want to determine what is the top on one of those four edges. Now you could put this back on, you could look at the edge. Before you take it off, you could even make a little mark so that you know which side is the top. On this RAINFLY, it just so happens to say Coody down here, so I just stretched it out a little bit. I know that that is on the back corner. So looking at that, I can just follow it up, and I know that this is gonna be the top. So we want to attach this up here. So to prepare for this and make sure we have this in the right position, we're going to fold it over. You can see that it has the Velcro on there. We're going to attach it on here with the Velcro right in the position of where it's going to be on the tent. That'll hold that in place, and now that gives us the flap in the correct position. And now we need to glue along the top here, but just this top edge so that it glues it to the tent RAINFLY right there. Because when we roll this up, we want to make sure that this is still available underneath to connect to the toggle to hold it up out of place. If you glue that down, you're out of luck and you got to somehow create another loop under there. So we're going to bring our seam grip back in with our little brush, and you're going to want to have some gloves handy. I should have had these yesterday, but I forgot to bring them with me. I actually had to use Goo Gone to get this stuff off my hands yesterday before it dried. Take our top off. Just going to put a little bit down through here. Use our brush to spread it out. We want to use this to glue this onto the tent. Make sure you get a good amount on there. And when you're doing this, don't accidentally glue this part to that. Okay, tuck that little loop in there, then put that down, let it just fall into place. Smooth that down. And then you can put a little layer along the edge here just to seal that up good. And that's going to give you a nice little waterproof seal along the top there. So there you go. And yes, if you're asking, you do need to now let that cure for 8 to 12 hours. Could you have saved the time and done it yesterday? Yes. But if you do these things in order, one step at a time, you will not mess up. Okay, it's about 7 hours later. I'm back over here. I got the RAINFLY on, and there is our stove jack that we just installed. How cool is that, guys? I did get a little bit of the glue on the fabric here. It's not the cleanest thing ever, but we got a stove jack in there. That's gonna make a world of difference with this tent. I also have some outdoor waterproof black paint coming that I'm gonna paint that. That way it'll blend in a little bit better with the black on here instead of just being beige and sticking out. But that's how it looks while it's closed. Here's how it looks open. From the inside, you can see that it matches right up with this one. And I did go ahead and set up the stove for anybody who wanted to see the stove set up in this black tent. And if we come over here, you can see that's how it looks with the new stove jack installed and the stovepipe sticking right out. Pretty dang cool if you ask me. And even though it took a couple days because we had to wait for the glue to cure, it was still a pretty quick, easy process to get that done. Now there's one other thing that I might do on my own. I took the piece that we cut off, I turned it around, and I put some adhesive Velcro on this side just to test it out. Rolls like this from Amazon. You can get it at like Home Depot or basically anywhere. Took a piece and I stuck it on the back side of that RAINFLY to see if it would stick and how easily it would come off. So when I pick at this, if you really tried to get it off of there, you could, but it might even tear a hole in there. But what it does tell me is that it sticks good enough on the back of the RAINFLY that we can cut a couple of strips, put it on the back of the RAINFLY here, right underneath here on the sides and the bottom, and that will stick to the Velcro on top the other one that's actually on the tent and hold this better in place. If you've seen the RBM Panda Large, you know what I'm talking about. I don't think it's really necessary, but it is another way to keep that secure. So there it is, guys. Stove jack successfully installed on the RAINFLY of this tent. Just standing back looking at this makes me want to get out there and do some camping. If you found this video helpful, or if you have questions about anything else camping related that you're thinking about doing, leave me a comment below. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys on the next camping adventure.